Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel called zuzanareacts, where I learn all things Bharat with your help and I just share my Slovak and European point of view. And in today's video, we're going to look into how money is being pulled out of China and what's actually happening with investing that money perhaps in India. But before we get into today's video,
please like this video and click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you so much for your support.
I'm ready. Are you? Let's go.
Thing about China threatening its neighbors. That facing off China militarily, something that may be desirable in the short term. And the US military is still the most powerful military machine in the world. Today, every Western country, whether it's Canada, whether it's the US, or the European countries, if you look at their national security doctrines, every single country says China is the biggest enemy.
Wow.
Jai Hind, friends. I'm Major Gauravadi and you're watching the Chanakya Dialogues English. Like this video, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon. Friends, there is a lot of talk about industry relocating from China to India. And there was an article in a lot of magazines. I mean, a lot of newspapers and magazines have quoted this article that Wall Street is now looking to put its money in India rather than China. India is the new darling of the world economy. And here is some statistic for you. So now what's happening is that 2 decades before, India's economy stood at approximately 500 billion US dollars. Today, ladies and gentlemen, our economy stands at 3.5 trillion US dollars. They're saying that it's on a trajectory to go to 5 trillion US dollars. Now, so there are a lot of things in India that still need improvement. The overall business environment, the regulations, the laws, etc., to make it an economy that is growing faster. But what we have seen so far is that China, now the big investors, and I'm going to take a few names here and give you some more data, are putting their bets on India. They are, if I may use the word, decoupling from China gradually. China still remains the world's backend for manufacturing. I mean, everything is manufactured in China today, right from a toothbrush to mobile phones to you name it, it's manufactured in China. But the fact of the matter is that slowly and slowly people are disengaging from China, and the big investors, those billion-dollar hedge funds, are now putting their money on India. India has potential. India gives returns. India is a democracy, and India's rise in the economic markets is not opaque. This is something that is being bandied about. It is not an opaque system. It is a transparent system, therefore giving you that much more reason to trust it. So Marshall Wace, a US $62 billion hedge fund, has positioned India as its biggest net long bet after the US. So Marshall Wace, which has $62 billion funds, is a $62 billion hedge fund, says that after the US, earlier it used to be China, but after the US, they're saying we're putting our money on India because India matters. India's infrastructure expansion under Prime Minister Narendra Modi aims to attract global capital and supply chains away from China and India's population. While it remains largely poor, its stock markets are expensive and its bond markets insular, but investors are drawn to its growth potential. Now, India has overtaken Hong Kong, ladies and gentlemen, as the fourth largest stock market in the world, and people are saying it's edging towards the third position is Japan, and Japan is at $6.2 trillion approximately. India has crossed 4 trillion as far as the stock market is concerned. Now, here are a few things that are happening, and it's making India a better destination for investment. 2-3 things. First of all, the US, and let me analyze this for you. Why is this happening? And suddenly, of course, there is a lot of infrastructural improvement in India. Old laws have been discarded, new laws have been put in place. It's a much more investor-friendly location now than it was maybe 10 years earlier or 20 years earlier. Today, people are looking at India differently. And those reasons for looking at India differently may or may not have anything to do with India at all. Now, let me explain why. Number one, we see that a lot of companies are moving away from China. And what is the reason for that? Does India offer a better ecosystem? Does India offer a better supply chain? Maybe not. India is improving day by day. But there are 3-4 factors here why companies are moving away from China to India and also to other countries, but especially to India. Number one is that China, till the time it was focusing on its economy and benefiting the world, everybody was speaking about China, and China was the toast in every country, in every capital, in every stock market. It was China all along for nearly 3 decades. But what happened later was that China started militarizing very fast. Using the money that it had earned from the West, it started creating a system that started threatening the West and still threatens the West. This is something that the West will never tolerate, and China needs to know that its domestic consumption is not so much, and China needs to understand that at the end of the day, its economy is reliant upon the USA and upon Europe. That is how the Chinese must look at the situation, and they must understand which unfortunately they do not. I think it's 30 years of super success has led to some degree of hubris, and the Chinese can no longer, look at the world as if they are service providers or product providers. Today, China says we want to rule the world. It's going to be a bipolar world. Yes, there'll be a US, but there'll also be a China, and we will face off. And you see this entire thing about China threatening its neighbors, threatening other countries. This entire wolf warrior diplomacy. 5 years back, 7 years back, there was no wolf warrior diplomacy of China. 10 years back, there was nothing. If you go back 20 years, China was absolutely cool about everything. China did not take up any. I've served along the line of actual control, by the way. I've served at high altitudes. My company post was at around 14,000 feet above sea level. I've served there. We were bang on the line of actual control. I mean, bang in the sense that we were 100, 200 meters, 300 meters behind, but we were there. And I could see that fence, which was outside my company post. And beyond that, after some time, there was, or some distance, there was Tibet, Chinese occupied. And I've been there, and we have waved at Chinese troops, and we've had interactions, and Chinese troops would wave at us. And there were many times when they would cross over into India, and we would cross over into China, and it's all, hey, how are you? And they didn't know how to speak English, and we didn't know how to speak Mandarin, etc. But it was always very friendly. What happened in between? Why did China suddenly become aggressive? Why did Galwan happen? Why did Doklam happen? Why did all these things happen all of a sudden? This is because of a Chinese shift in policy after decades of economic super success. Suddenly China had the money, and suddenly China started rubbing the world the wrong way. And over a period of time, people said, and people realized that facing off China militarily is something that may be desirable, in the short term. And the US military is still the most powerful military machine in the world. And China doesn't hold a candle. China can say that we have more number of boats, but how many aircraft carriers does China have? And how many of those aircraft carriers that China has, maybe 3 now, how many of them are nuclear powered? None. So the question here is different. The question is, what can China actually do to the world? It can try and land grab. It's done a lot of that. China can be aggressive. China has put its money, checkbook diplomacy, buying up countries like Pakistan, buying up countries like Sri Lanka, buying up countries like Maldives, trying to influence countries like Nepal, creating chaos in the Middle East through Iran, creating chaos in Africa. China can do all of that because China has money. But a real war, a face-to-face, a real pitched battle, I don't think China is ready for that. China did fight a war. The last war that China fought was in 1979 against Vietnam, and it wasn't so pleasant for the People's Republic. They were beaten badly by the Vietnamese. Let me also put on record that everybody's been beaten badly by the Vietnamese. So no surprises there. The Russians were helping the Vietnamese at that point in time, but it was not direct help. They gave them training, they gave them weapons, and the Vietnamese beat the United States of America.
Wow.
So, I mean, they've taken on superpowers and they've won. So coming back to the point that what happened was that it started threatening countries like the United States, and it started threatening countries across the European continent. And today, every country, every Western country, whether it's Canada, whether it's the US or the European countries, if you look at their national security doctrines, every single country says China is the biggest enemy. What happened? How did China, the backyard of world manufacturing, which every company relied upon, every country relied upon, every stock market relied upon, whether company, country, stock market, everybody's relying on China. Why has China become everybody's national security nightmare? It is because of the Chinese attitude, this Chinese sense of aggression, that we are the center of the world, we will dictate. It was not there earlier, as I mentioned. It came about later, after money. And so the world realized that the best way to control China was to hit China where it hurt China the most. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the Chinese economy. And how do you hit the Chinese economy? You hit the Chinese economy by disrupting their supply chain. Therefore, an agreement on supply chain resilience, to which many countries are signatory, including India, including Japan, including Australia, etc. They've signed off this document saying that, supply chain resilience. India is creating its own supply chains. And this is what this article says. This article clearly says that more and more people are now believing in India's supply chain in India, while the Chinese economy is still far, far ahead of India. But more and more people are pulling out their money from China and putting in their money into India. They're investing in India because they believe in the India story. And the last argument that I have here is, this is not something that India says. And I don't think India can say that diplomatically, at least. However, I think democracies need to engage with democracies. You see, you might condemn China's lack of democracy. You might say that it's put 1.5 million Muslims in jail. But why does that count for anything at all? It should not. Your condemnations cannot count for anything simply because you're still doing business with China. You feel that Russia did something wrong. You feel that Russia invaded Ukraine, therefore Russia should be sanctioned. All right, it's your wish. You can sanction Russia. But what about China? China has put 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims in jail just for the crime of being Muslims. 3-year-old kid. What's your name? My name is Muhammad. Off to jail. That's what China has done. Put entire families in re-education camps. China should be sanctioned. The world should stop doing business, including India. We should stop doing any sort of business with China. And this is how democracies will grow. Democracies need to engage with democracies, right? What is China? China is essentially Iran without the oil. And what is North Korea? North Korea is essentially China without the manufacturing.
Wow.
So the more democracies, interact with democracies, do business with democracies, the idea of a democratic world grows. You can't pay lip service to democracy and then do business with China, amongst the worst dictatorships in the world. With this.
Okay, so I believe this is it to the video. I mean, I don't think he is wrong, and obviously I've noticed that myself, that the investment is being pulled, and for me it's like go India go, and the whole China inspections, but we know who allowed it to happen, and I've had a chat even with Americans, and they're aware, but I would think that for the most Americans perhaps do not agree, at least the educated ones, fingers crossed, that whatever America has done in the world is all right and okay, and even these things that they've allowed to happen, but maybe it's reserved to a few people that are very aware, or they live in the left the United States, and they live in Europe, because I've discussed with people like that. So it's very interesting, but it's going to be good for, I guess, for India in the long run. And I do share a sentiment that we should be making business with similar kind of minded nations, and like the example is drawn about children being put to jail just for, I mean, this is like batshit crazy. Like you can't even grasp your head, like there is a nation which is basically 1 billion people, and that's kind of what things that they believe in, and it's just all mad. I'm very curious how all of this is going to evolve or end up. I don't think we will be here to see that, how it all ends up, at least for how the relations evolve, and yeah, maybe everything is just going to be, I think that the end game is move everything from China to India and completely isolate China, but that's what I think. What do you guys think, and what do you see happening? Please do let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video with me. If you did enjoy it, please give a thumbs up, share, like, and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you next one. Until then, please do take care. I'm sending much love. Bye-bye.